Hi everyone, today I'm going to share with you a Waifu motherboard coming from Gigabyte known as the B850M Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7 ICE-P, and the cute Waifu character is Eri. There is an ongoing promotion with this motherboard if you were to purchase within this month here in Singapore, alright, only in Singapore. And the last date is 31st of March. So within this period of time, if you purchase this, you will be provided with a blind box. And this blind box contains one of the figurine. There are a total of 4 randomly. So if you are interested in this board and you like what you see today, right, and you wanted this figurine, you can scan on my top right hand corner where it has the QR code, and you can just purchase it and to get this blind box together with the motherboard. So do take note, it only lasts till 31st of March this year. Okay. Now, I'd like to thank Gigabyte to have provided this motherboard for me to share with everyone, and especially to CDL Trading. They have deliberately opened up 3 blind box just for me to display and to show you guys, and also the arrangement on the delivery. So these are the 3 figurines that I have. Pretty cute, right? Now, when you do the unboxing, these are the items that you will get. The Wi-Fi antenna, which is in white. Now, this is magnetic. See, followed by the quick installation guide and the regulatory notice with a very nice airy picture and a leaflet of stickers, again with the character, and I believe these are the CMOS battery stickers. A bag of G Connect, whereby it's meant for you to connect to your front I/O. So instead of having the case front I/O connectors, right, to plug here separately, just plug it to this connector. So you just slot the whole thing in directly, and to remove, right, you just pull the whole thing. You'll be provided with a set of SATA cables, one which is right angle, one which is straight. An elegant piece of M-ATX board, and the measurement from here to here is at 244mm by 244mm. And as for the height of the VRM, this is at 30mm. And at the rear, this is at 45mm. The construction of the board is pretty sturdy, though it's 6 layer with 2-ounce copper traces. As for the structure on the VRM heatsink, right, at the side, it's pretty beefy, and it has fin stack for it to dissipate heat. And there is a chamber pipe that links from the side VRM to the rear. And as for the rear, right, it's very chunky. Okay, probably I'll show you here. See, it's very chunky, and it does have pin stack too. As mentioned to you, there is a chamber pipe linking from the side VRM to the rear. This will definitely help in heat dissipation. Now, as for the design of this board, as you can see, it's very oriental. It has a different tone of black, orange and such, but I would say the overall board in fact is in white. As you can see, the DIMM slot are in white, the 24 pin socket is in white, all these connection points are in white, inclusive of the 8-pin EPS connector. And for the design, right, now this rear I/O is pretty glossy, tons of fingerprint. Probably, you know, it would be good that Gigabyte will supply a microfiber cloth, right? Once this is mounted in a case, right, you can have user to have a better experience to clean off all the fingerprints. Anyway, for the design, it's pretty slick. You have the airy character over here, and a subtle frame which is in black with light tones of silver, and the wording Aorus. And the cute thing is that at the center, right, where you plug your processor, the cover does have the airy character. And at the bottom, attention to details, this is something which I like. Now, if you wouldn't take note on it, right, when you mount it, right, you wouldn't have noticed what they have designed. In fact, there is a boatman crossing the sea across the mountain, where you have a pavilion over here, and this is the sun, or could be the moon. In fact, this should be the moon. Now, coming to the crest itself on the chipset, Nice design. When you look at it, it's just a crest. But if you look deep into detail, right, in fact, this is the mountain where this is the sun rising. So these are the details that I like a lot. And on the board itself, there are subtle lines and such. Now moving on to the back, this is how it looks like. See? Nicely done. Now for the power face of this board, right, it's 12 plus 2 plus 2. And all these are running on 60 ampere choke. So it is small enough to tank a high-end processor, which is 9950X or a 9950X 3D. At the center where you have the 1718 socket, this is able to support 9000, 8000 and 7000 series processor from AMD. Right at the bottom, you have total of 4 DIMM slot, and it has a max capacity of 256 gig, and it's running on dual channel. And this does support XMP profile and Expo profile, and has a max mega transfer rate of 8200. Now do take note, when I mention about 8200 mega transfer rate, right, it doesn't mean that you populate all the 4 RAM stick, it will run at 8200. It greatly depends on the quality of the RAM stick, the bin itself. If it's good, when you trigger the Expo profile or XMP profile, right, it will run at 8200. So take note on this. Now coming for the PCIe slot, this board is very simple. In fact, you only have 2 PCIe slot, where the top slot is Gen 5 and it's controlled by the processor, and this is backward compatible, and at all times, right, this is running at a speed of x16. Else for the bottom section, this is Gen 3, it's controlled by the chipset, and the max speed is at x4. Now additional to this, right, both of these are backward compatible, and only the top slot has this metal frame to build the rigidity, so you don't have to worry that you will break the PCIe plastic, which is like that. So a reinforcement when you plug your graphic card. Now as for the M.2, let me just remove this, and to show you, you have total of 2, which the top slot is Gen 5, controlled by the processor, and is backward compatible, and is running on full speed X4. At the bottom, this is Gen 4, and again the speed is X4, and it's running off from the chipset. Now all that I mentioned, the PCIe slot and the M.2, all these are no lane sharing, meaning to say whatever you populate on the PCIe slot or the M.2, right, it will just run on full speed. For the locking mechanism, starting off with the PCIe slot, only the top slot where you plug in your card, right, where this is in the lock position, to unlock your graphic card, you have this button over here. When you press it, it will release the locking mechanism. See, let me just zoom in and show you. Take note on this, this is in lock position, so if I were to press this, right, this will be unlocked. And this is only on the top slot. Else for the bottom slot, you will need to, push down manually. Now as for the M.2, the mounting is pretty straightforward, and this M.2 heatsink is pretty chunky. So when you press this up, I mean the lever up, you can lift up the whole M.2. See, as mentioned to you, this is very chunky, and at the top you have the thermal pad. And to put this back on, all is needed is just to clip this, should I say, slot this two to the top over here. So align it properly. So once you slot it in, right, you can just press it down. It's that simple. And as for the M.2, in order for you to slot in, right, you don't have to use screws to hold on the M.2. So when you port in, right, okay, you can just press it down and this will be in place. To unlock, just press this. Same goes to the bottom section. It's the same locking mechanism. Nicely done. Now on top of which, what I like about this board is that your CMOS battery is removable, because some that I've actually reviewed, right, all this is either under the chipset, or it's port underneath the real VRM, especially for MSI board. In fact, I don't really like, you know, CMOS battery that's under the chipset or underneath the VRM heatsink. That will have lots of problem. Let's say you want to do a reset, though you have a clear CMOS over here, but it will still be better to have a clear CMOS battery, right, able to be removed. So that will totally clear off all the configuration on your UEFI. This board does support onboard audio, which make use of the ALC AL1220. And as for the connection, starting off from the middle section over here, this is the ESPI DP socket, and this is only meant for lab engineers. We don't really use this. And what it does is it will check the error codes while the system is running. It will check for the error codes and to do the tuning and such, which we do not use. Right at the bottom, you have the audio socket for your front headphone and microphone jack. Total of 2 ARGB 3-pin 5V connector at the bottom and a 4-pin RGB. Now what's the difference? This is 12V, whereas for this two, right, are 3V. In modern standard, right, most of the time we are using addressable RGB. That's where you connect to. Else, if let's say you have legacy RGB, right, that doesn't do the addressable, as in like the signals and such, right, make use of this 12V port. Now, right at the top, you can see this socket over here. This is for demo purposes, whereby it allows you to connect a current so that it will lit up the ARGB effect, which is beneath the heatsink, the chipset heatsink, when you don't plug in your processor, your RAMs, or to boot up the system. So by plugging to this, right, it will show the ARGB effect. Now next, you have this TPM module socket. You have total of 4-pin PWM fan headers at the bottom, which is 1, 2, 3, and 4. 2 USB 2.0 socket. This is the front I/O port. And right above it, right, there is this 2-pin over here. Okay, probably you can see over here. This is meant for clear CMOS. So when you short it, right, it will reset all your configuration that you've done on the board to default. Now at the front, a 3.0 socket whereby it caters for your front I/O type A port, and it has a max speed of 5 gig transfer rate. Total of 4 SATA socket. Now, take note, if you were to populate all the M.2 and all the SATA ports, right, with your 2.5-inch SSD or the 3.5-inch hard disk, there are no lane sharing. You can operate all in one go, not a problem. Then you have this Type-C socket, which is generation 2.2 and has a transfer rate of 20 gig. And this is meant for your front I/O Type-C port. Next, you have the internal HDMI port. This is only projecting up to 1080p, and it has a transfer rate of 30 Hz. So this is actually useful when you have a internal monitor where you want to show the stats and such, right? Inside the computer, you can just plug the HDMI cable to here. Next, you have a 24-pin socket. This is where you draw the power from your PSU to connect the 24-pin cable to this, so that it will supply power to the rest of your component. Then over here, now there are debug LEDs over here. Okay, there are a total of 4, and all this will only light in red as a cycle. So this is something which I hope that Gigabyte can improve on. Probably have different colors, because the wording itself, right, is pretty small, as you can see. BGA, CPU, the boot, and DRAM. So with the color, color codes, right, it will be much more easier to read. Then right at the top, you have this RST pin. Now this is programmable. I'll show you what this is. In fact, it's this. A closer look. This pin here over here. Okay, if you do connect a switch to it, right, you can run either safe mode or reset mode, or to turn off the ARGB effect on the motherboard itself. And at the side, you have this button. This is the reset switch, and another 3-pin 5V ARGB connector. Now moving to the top, you have 2 additional, or should I say 4-pin PWM fan connector, where once it says CPU fan. This is meant for you to connect your air cooler fan or your radiator fans of your liquid AIO. Else for the CPU op, you can plug your liquid AIO pump to this CPU op, but make sure you go to UEFI to configure it to either run at consistent full speed or 80%. Then you have one 8-pin EPS connector. Now to show you something real cool, as you know that earlier on I mentioned about the connection, right? There is this RST switch. Okay, let me just zoom in, which is over here. So I plug this to a physical switch, which is this. Now of course you don't have to use the whole thing. There are optional where you can purchase a switch like this, which has a 2-pin connector. You can connect over here. Now if you look on my screen, right, on my top left, okay, this is in Windows mode. I programmed this RST switch to boot into UEFI. So when I toggle this, right, take a look at what happened to the screen itself. Okay, this probably will take some time. It will boot into UEFI. See, my screen have toggled that. In fact, it's resetting, and in no time, right, it will flash, or should I say it will go into UEFI. See, it's a straight process. And another good point is that besides this, right, you can program the RST switch under settings, go into miscellaneous, see, RST multi-key. Right now it's set to BIOS setup. If I were to set to LED on off, okay, right now I'm just going to save it and let it boot. So when you have set that, right, take a look at the ARGB. Okay, right now probably I'll let it boot first. I've not touched the screen and such, so when it's booting up, right, it's already it's already programmed. So when I press this, right, you take a look at the ARGB effect. See, you just turn off. This is the beauty of the RST switch. You can either set it to turn on and off your ARGB, or you can set it as a, you know, one click to your UEFI, or even as a reset switch. But I don't think you will program this as a reset switch, because right at the side, okay, let me just zoom in. Right at the side, right, there is already a physical reset switch. This is the rear I/O. You're provided with a display port. That's right, no HDMI port, only display port, and this is version 1.4, having a projection rate of 8K, 144 Hz. And this is making use of the integrated graphic on the processor itself. Right at the side, you have this QFlash Plus. This is whereby you have the firmware plugged to this socket which says BIOS, and to press on this and to update the BIOS without having your processor or your RAMs connected to it. Now, for more information on how to use the QFlash Plus, check on the official website, or you can click on my top right hand corner where it takes you to a content creator known as Ronin Wow. He does illustrate on how to make use of this QFlash Plus. There are a total of 11 type USB type A port, okay, from here all the way to here. Now the white ones are version 2.0, and the blue ones having a transfer rate of 5 gig, and the red ones having a transfer rate of 10 gig. And right at the bottom over here, you have one USB type C port, and it has a transfer rate of 10 gig. Right at the top, you have the RJ45 socket, which is meant for your internet connection, which is wired. It has a transfer rate of 2.5 gig. Over this section, this is the Wi-Fi socket, which support Wi-Fi 7 and has a channel bandwidth of 160 MHz. Over here are the audio plug, where you have the line out for your speaker, your microphone as usual, and the SPDIF out. Now as for the socket on the Wi-Fi antenna, do take note, because their antenna is proprietary. Do not break this, alright? Once you break this, right, you're gonna have problems getting a replacement. Or if it's under warranty, right, you probably can get replacement by submitting a RMA. But do be careful. And how to plug is pretty straightforward. Instead of screwing in, right, you just plug it in, and this is secured. And to remove, just to unplug. It's pretty straightforward. And forget to mention that this Wi-Fi socket does support Bluetooth, which is version 5.4. This motherboard does come with an in-house application known as the Gigabyte Control Center, which you can see over here. So when you install this, right, you can fiddle with all the functions to control the motherboard ARGB and such, which I will show you later. Now, first time when you install this, right, do not just straight away fiddle with all the functions. I would advise, if this is a newly installed Windows 11 application, check on the device manager. Because sometimes the device manager itself, right, the device might have some exclamation mark or such. And for those without, right, sometimes it's actually often using the Windows default drivers. So you want to have everything up to date. So what you can do is that either, for most of us, right, in the past, we will just head down to the official website of this motherboard, download all the drivers manually and to install it. But for this application over here, as mentioned, is to control the function on your motherboard. Click on the last icon which says Update Center. When you click on here, right, it will gather all the information as in like the missing drivers on your motherboard and such, and you will show over here. Now, of course, I have done the drivers update. As you can see, there are no exclamation mark over here, because these are the ones that are installed. See, the Wi-Fi drivers, the Bluetooth and such, and all the application that you need. Things like, you know, the ARGB fusion. Now, starting off, once you have done all the necessary updates, when you launch this application, right, you will see this interface where you have two functions over here, which is the first one, Wi-Fi compass, or the RGB fusion. Since I'm talking about RGB, let's start off with the RGB. Now, on the motherboard itself, as mentioned to you during the intro, right, the only ARGB effect is underneath the chipset area. As you can see, is listed red. So to control this, right, click on the RGB fusion of this tab. So this is how it looks like on the interface. You can, you know, change the different settings and such. Now just put this over here to let you see. It is very responsive when you do the changes. Take for example, right now is okay, it's in red over here. So whatever reflected on the physical motherboard, right, is in red. I set to yellow. See? Set to green, set to blue. It's very responsive. Why do I say so? Because on the dashboard itself, right, when you see this change, right, the motherboard color will change instantly. See? So we can just do a comparison. Okay, let me just do this comparison from here to here. That's why I say it's very responsive. There is no delay or such. Even if you do the effects, see, it follows instantly. Now, besides the ARGB control, right, back to the front where it says compass, right. In fact, when you click on this tabs over here, right, it's bringing you to this tab where you have the Wi-Fi, RGB fusion, fan control, and performance. Okay, let me just close this. Now, earlier on, I was showing you the RGB effect. You can also do overclocking on the go, as in like clicking on the performance, right, then it will just warn you, etc. You just click on OK. Then you can control your CPU, your RAMs, and to set the system alert. Now for CPU, right, as you can see, you can set the ratio up to you. It's on the fly. You can set this too, up to you. I'm not going to do any settings over here, but I'm just telling you that you can do this. And for the load line calibration, you can set things like that. It will just run on the go. Same goes to your DDR RAMs, but DDR RAMs right now I'm actually using Expo Profile, so that's why it's actually Profile 3. If you want to manually, right, you can just disable and to set the multiplier and etc., which I'm not going to do that. Now, something very useful. Most of us, or should I say some of you out there, right, are very worried about how much voltage and how much voltage is being drawing that will cause harm to your system. And often you will just do overlay during games. Okay, let me just show you. Oops. Okay. So while you're playing the game, right, you have this overlay. You have this overlay showing you that, you know, the voltage and such. A better way to monitor all this so-called danger zone, right? Instead of having the overlay that runs extra, you know, background memory. Okay, because you got to open certain application. just to make sure that your system is working healthy. You can make use of this application where it has the system alert, whereby you can set the vCall, the memory voltage. So take for example your CPU. You don't want your CPU to run above 1.2. This is actually 1.5. So you can set 1.2. Okay. By the way, this is minimum, this is maximum. Alright. This is not manual tune your B clock. Okay. This is to set a gauge between this minimum and maximum. So as you do your gameplay and such, right, you don't have to worry a single thing. You don't have to pull the overlays. You just play on with the games. And when your system detected that is above 1.2 volt consistently, straight away it will prompt an error message telling you that, hey, look, your system is pulling this much. Please take care of it. So that you know that, oh, this is, I'm not going to do this prolong. I'm going to do a minor adjustment. So this is very handy when you're applying this. So these are the functions that you can do. I've actually spoken about this. And for fan control on the go, same thing. You have different profiles, as you can see over here, right? All the fan headers, your CPU fan, your CPU op, and such. Now it happened that my liquid AIO, the radiator fans on CPU section over here, and for my pump is CPU op. So we can control all this. And of course you can do the curve over here. See, I can do this, or you can make use of the profile over here. Up to you. Alright, now these are the basic function. I'm not going to go into it, but these are things that you can do. And having said this, right, next will be the last section, which is Wi-Fi compass. Now this is very, very useful. You can either choose to go into detail as in like to place your Wi-Fi antenna, okay, and to do a 4D detection, whereby you have to move on the same spot but to face your antenna, face right, to the front, to the left, to the back, to the right, and showing you the result, which is the best result. I would say that most of us will be using this. Now my Wi-Fi antenna is on the ground away from my router, so when you do a scan, right, you will tell you the signal strength. Okay, right now it's excellent, I know, because my router and my Wi-Fi antenna is not very far apart, but it just happened that I'm placing my Wi-Fi antenna on the ground. That's why I'm having this. If I were to move my Wi-Fi antenna, take a look at the current. Okay, I'm just going to move my Wi-Fi antenna to the top. See, the signal are much more better. So with this, right, it's so much simpler. I don't have to. Normally I used to download the Wi-Fi analyzer to analyze which channel and such, and to take my mobile phone to press on the speed test to test on the signal. Else for this, right, you don't have to. Where else you can just place the Wi-Fi antenna to the position that is having the stronger signal. So this will cut off all the hassle of downloading the Wi-Fi analyzer and such. Is all in one application on the Gigabyte Control Center. This is what I like. So as you can see, it's very functional. I know some of you do not like Gigabyte Control Center and you say that it's running on the background, etc, etc. But for me, right, no, not at all. Based on the fact that if you are using only one ecosystem, which is the Gigabyte Center, and you don't induce too much ARGB, that's the reason why I don't like ARGB effects. You are inducing a lot of background on it, and it clutter and causing tons of cluster and having a fight with the Gigabyte Control Center. That's the reason why a lot dislike Gigabyte Center, based on the fact that they don't use this at all, and this is fighting among signal RGB and such. Sorry, this one. So that's the reason why you find that the Gigabyte Control Center right, is very laggy. Anyway, this is your choice. I would say that this is actually a very good application. You have the notification on here, okay, which I don't have to run overlay, controlling a certain. I mean, it's like having an alert based on what your CPU is using, your RAMs are using on the voltage itself. It will give you a alert prompt. Another thing is that the Wi-Fi compass, it is very useful. Starting off with the network connection, as this board is provided with two different types of connection, which is the wired, the 2.5 gig port, and the wireless, which is a Wi-Fi 7. Now, though it's actually stated as Wi-Fi 7, the signal channel bandwidth is in between 6E and 7, based on the fact that it's using a 160 MHz channel bandwidth. Now, starting off with the test on the local area network, which is the wired 2.5 gig. My ISP is in fact a 10 gig provider, but it will pull to the max of what this LAN connection port will do. So here we go. As I press this, right, it should hover around 2.2, 2.3. And by the way, this is local to local. So as you can see, it does perform as stated, which is around the 2.3 gig upon the 2.5 gig. And as for upload, it's similar. Now this is only on local to local. If I were to stretch this to further away, which I will pull down to this, one of my favorite tests. Now it also depends on the carrier or the server that you're reaching out. If that server, right, from overseas is not catering the 5 gig or 2.5 gig, right, you will not hit the I would say the bandwidth. So just take, for example, if I were to take this, okay, the last one, as you can see, right, if I were to run this, I don't think it will hit 2.5 gig, not at all. See, as I know that that server is providing only either a 1 gig or 1.5 gig carrier. Okay, I'm just going to stop this. I do know that from Kuala Lumpur, which is 196 miles or so, right, this does the trick. So as you can see, right, I'm reaching out to from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur. There will be a struggle, I mean, as like initial start, but once it's established, right, as you can see, the network connection is 2.3 gig, which also check out of what this network adapter can do, or should I say the RJ45 LAN port can do. See the upload and the download. Now I'm just going to disable this, the LAN port, and to enable the Wi-Fi. Now as mentioned to you, for the Wi-Fi 7, right, if it is a true Wi-Fi 7, it will reaches up to 3.2 or 3.3 gig. But since it's actually using 160 MHz, in general, most Wi-Fi 7 out there, right, on the motherboard is making use of this 160 MHz channel bandwidth. So that is as, you know, expected. So my expectation on this for the Wi-Fi connection, right, it should hover around 1.6, 1.7. Okay, let's test on the local server. So this is local to local. See, it hovers around there, 1.6, 1.7. So this does check out well on the network adapter. And for the upload, see, it hovers around there, 1.6, 1.7. This is expected. And if I were to test overseas, okay, again, I'm just going to pick the Gigabit. Yep, this one. Now for Wi-Fi 7, there will be a slight delay, as it's actually not wired, so it takes some time to reach. See, it's pumping. If you compare with the LAN connection, right, there will be a slight delay on it. So this is expected, but overall it's still sustained at a download speed of 1.6 or 1.7. Same goes to the upload. Upload might be slightly different, but that will be alright, so long it's not pulling below 1 gig and such. Okay, right now, if let's say I'm just going to retry, right, I hope that, you know, the upload will be much better, as there is the channel establishment on it. Okay, see, it's still coming. So don't expect that Wi-Fi, you know, going on Wi-Fi, right, it will be instantly hitting to that channel bandwidth. No, it doesn't. See, right now after the establishment, right, as you can see, my upload, right, is better. So this does check out both connection, be it the line connection or the Wi-Fi, is according to specs. Now the next thing I'd like to talk about, in fact, is a very neat function, an application known as the AI Snap. As you can see on my right, this is the AI Snap. Now, how do you actually get this application? Is through the update center. when you're downloading all the drivers and such, right, there is this application listed. Just to show you. See? So what does this do? Now, before I do anything, okay, let me just launch the AI Snap. Okay, before I do anything, just to show you, this is the interface, and to show you the stats on my memory. This is only on Expo profile. I will do a screenshot so you can compare before and after using the Expo AI Boost. So I'm just going to do this. Let's see, where is my snapshot. I'll take a snapshot on this. Okay, so this is just Expo profile, and to run the benchmark, go launch either 64, and to run this, okay, as you can see, I'm making use of this motherboard, and I'm just going to run the benchmark. So this is on only Expo profile, and some of us might not be able to do fine-tune and tweaks and such on the RAMs itself to get the maximum performance. So with the AI Snatch, right, it is able to calculate all the algorithm and to, you know, figure what your RAMs is able to perform. A very nice feature. So right now it's just on default. As mentioned to you, I've not used the AI Boost, or should I say the AI Snatch. And these are the readings. I will do a screenshot on this, and right after that I will show you how the application works. Okay, see, so take note on the the latency on the memory and on the L3 cache. Okay, probably not on the L3 cache because this varies depending on the background usage. I'm just going to do a screenshot over here. So this is before, alright, this two, which is showing you the configuration by default Expo and the benchmark. Now, come to the AI Snatch. Okay, I'm just going to close this. With this application, when you click on Expo AI Boost, see, down here there's no prediction result at all, and you're using the Expo profile as is shown over here. So when I click on start with AI, within seconds it will just calculate. It's pretty fast. Mission completed, and you will see over here, see, prediction result is accomplished. And how to apply this AI Boost, because right now, as you can see here, right, Expo AI Boost in BIOS is not activated. You need to activate it. And how do you actually do it? Just click on apply. It will reboot to UEFI. So this will take some time. Once it boot into UEFI, right, you can toggle the AI Boost profile. Alright, nice UEFI interface, right? Okay, anyway, you're gonna see this at the end of my video because I'll be talking about the UEFI interface and such. Now, coming to enable the AI Boost profile. As you can see here, I've only set Expo on. Have this disabled, and right underneath you have this Expo AI Boost. Enable this, and make sure you know the RAM frequency that you have. As you can see here, I know it's 6000. You can actually check over here, so I'll check on this. You can set it 6002, up to you, but I know that the sweet spot of my RAMs is this. So with this profile, right, inclusive of the algorithm that it's calculated within the system, is going to pump all the configuration just to do the advanced DRAM timing. So I'm just going to do this. Once you have set this right, I will save and boot into Windows, and to show you what exactly happened. Okay, see, as you can see, the Expo profile I've disabled. I've enabled the AI Boost, which comes from the AI Snatch. So here we go. Now the system is booting up to Windows. It's pretty fast. Okay, I will let it sit for a while. As you can see, all my background is running, especially for the hardware info and such. Now I am just gonna show you the after and before. Oh yeah, speaking of which, right, before I did a snapshot. So this is in fact the settings, which is this. Now right now I'm just gonna pull what's done after the AI boost. Okay, probably I should show you this instead. On the AI Snatch, right? See, earlier on this was not enabled. I've enabled on the BIOS, so that's why you see that it's listed over here. I've set it. See, I've set the profile to 6000 mega transfer, and besides this, right, it just push whatever algorithm that is best to perform on your RAMs. Right now, just to show you on the RAM configuration, so this is what is done after AI enabling AI boost. If you do compare, right, take a look. There are changes done. See, you can compare. So these are things that it has calculated for you. And right now, to run the benchmark, it will be of a better result. Okay, we have to run this. Okay, placing over here just to run. This will take some time. So the beauty of this AI Snatch, right, of what Gigabyte have actually done, is fantastic. I don't have to manually figure what are the configuration that is best for my RAMs. Instead, it's all generated by AI. So having to say this, right, you will get better latency and better gameplay when you run games. Alright, as mentioned, this is going to take some time. And part of the reason why I'm having this here, because I wanted to monitor the SoC voltage, because I wouldn't want this to go over 1.2. This is just my habit, I guess. Alright, results are almost done. So as you can compare, right, once the result is out, I will show you the snapshot that I've done previously without the AI. Okay, done. Okay, with this result over here, okay, probably I just shut this down here. It's pretty okay. Here we go. Now this is the result after you have toggled the AI boost. Right, I know I'm a bit long-winded, but just wanted to show you. Profile is on. Okay, it's enabled on BIOS, and this is the result. And if I were to show you the screenshot before enabling this AI boost, right, okay, this was it. Take a look at the result. Latency from 77.6 nanoseconds, it gone to 69.5 nanoseconds. And the L3 cache is slightly better, yes. But the main thing is that on the memory itself, right, overall, it's running so much faster. See? It's about 7 to 8 nanoseconds lower, which is better. This section is to show you the RAM training cycle, as this is a characteristic of AM5 platform. Now, as you can see on my top right hand corner, there is this black screen. This is in fact connected to the system itself, where I've already set up the processor, the RAMs and such. The moment when I press the power button, which is located on my lower right, and on the screen itself, right, you will see a stopwatch. The moment I press the power button, I will press the start on the stopwatch, and this will show you how long it takes. Here we go. Now during this process, right, do not interrupt it, let it verify. Do not shut down, do not clear CMOS or such. If you keep on doing that, right, that will hurt the system itself. Now one thing bad about this board is that the LED indication, right, during the RAM training cycle, right, is all in red. Hopefully that, you know, Gigabyte will take into consideration to set this as different color, so you will know that exactly what are the components that is not running properly. Now for those of you actually migrating from Intel to AM5 platform, or you're upgrading AM3 or AM4 to AM5, right, don't expect, as mentioned, piece out everything and you'll boot into UEFI. It will take some time, because the verification is to set the system to run at a stable mode, where it gather the JDAC profile of your RAMs, inclusive of the profile on your processor and your M.2 and such. So at this period of time, as mentioned, let it run. Do not interrupt it. As mentioned, if you interrupt it, do clear CMOS and such, right, it will hurt the system. Now, this will only do it one time. Then you say it's only for the very first time. So once everything is verified, subsequently when you do cold boot or you reset the machine to UEFI, right, it will be very fast. See, it takes about 1 minute 26 seconds. And do note, the higher capacity that you have, the higher mega transfer you have on the RAMs itself, right, it takes much longer. I've tested on a 96 gig RAMs, right, well, that takes approximately 6 minutes to boot into UEFI for the very first time. Now with this said, right, this is already done. I'm just going to reset this system here. Okay, let me just pull my stopwatch. Okay, I'm just going to reset the stopwatch. Right now, I'm just going to press the reset switch on the motherboard. So the moment I press the reset, I will run the stopwatch. Here we go. Now, of course, on the screen itself, right, you won't see any reaction because there is a delay. Yes, I'm using an IP KVM. So right now, see, with no HDMI signal, it's actually rebooting. So how long does it take to reboot? Once after verification, it takes approximately about 15 to 16 seconds. So this is how fast it is to boot. So remember, once it's verified, you don't have to worry next time when you want to boot into UEFI, it's going to take 1 minute 26 seconds. No, it only takes about 16 seconds. And again, also depending on your RAMs, how big the capacity and how fast the mega transfer. As for the very first time, right, it will take much longer. Okay, now I'm just going to do a thermal test on this motherboard and take a look at the temperature. This is my room temperature. I'm not turned on the aircon. I'm not turned on the aircon. Deliberately wanted to test how well this performs in a hot and humid country. So it's hovering around 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. For the thermal test on this board, I'll be using all these components. You can pause and have a look. Starting off with the processor, which is a Ryzen 9 9950X. As for the motherboard, which is this, and for the RAMs, is a 32 gig kit with cache latency of CL28 and a mega transfer of 6000 and having a voltage of 1.45. And yes, I did enable the expo profile, but instead of using that, I'm using the AI boost expo on, which is off from the Gigabyte AI Snatch. And for the M.2, I'll be using a Bywin X570 2TB Gen 5 NVMe. And as for the cooler, I'm making use of, yes, it's old, but this will definitely tell how well this motherboard performs, which is a Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 360. Now, instead of using the default Arctic P12 ARGB fans, right, I have changed to a high static pressure fans, which are the 3x120mm Gentle Typhoon. And I did offset on my V-core, or should I say my processor voltage, to a minus 0.05 volt. And as for the SoC, for my RAMs, I've set it to 1.15. Now, having to set this as 1.15, right, on the actual run, the VSoC might not run at this. It might pull even further, depending on how demanding it is for the system, for my RAMs to run on those profile, which is the AI Boost Expo profile. Now, for the room temperature, I've shown you it's 30 degrees Celsius to 31 degrees Celsius. Now, for the PVO limits that I've done, I've set to default on this processor, which is the 9950X. As you can see, the PPT, the TDC, and EDC, these are default. I've not touched. And as for curve optimizer, since there are two stacks, I've done the first stack as minus 15, the second stack as minus 10. For curve shaper, these are all the frequency that I've touched: the medium frequency, high frequency, and max frequency. And each frequency having its own temperature, which is low, medium, and high. But I've set it equal. So for mid frequency on all the temperature, I've set it to minus 15. High frequency, set it to minus 10. And max frequency, I've set it to minus 0.5. Application that I made use of. This is Ryzen Master, which shows you all the PPT, TDC, and such, and the power drawn, and for the peak speed of of my processor, and making use of Cinebench R23 together with the Firmark. Now, reason to use this, right, as I'm not using a discrete graphic card, I have select both of this application to stress test on my processor, both integrated and the CPU load. So that's why I'm using these two to run. And over here, right, this is just to show you the hardware info on all the cores on the clock speed. Now, how I conduct the test is pretty straightforward. I've set up a system, done all the settings. First of all, I run the 30-minute stress test from Cinebench together with Firmark. So once it's cooled down, right, I will then let it idle for 5 minutes. And during that 5 minutes time, right, you'll be able to see the idle. Okay, let me just see if we can do the start. Okay, probably I just remove off this. This is at idle. Okay, right after the 5 minutes. 5 minutes cooldown time before I run the 10 minutes. So what you see over here, right, when I run it is the last 10 minutes stress test to show you the results. So at idle is pretty alright. This system is able to let my processor idle at 46 degrees Celsius, having to say that my room temperature is 30 to 31 degrees Celsius. And for the rest, right, probably you need to take note about the power drawage and such, like the CPU temperature, the clock speed. Now, this is on average, alright. If you want to see how well this system can push my processor, you will have to take a look at the peak speed. Okay, the best among all the cores, I should say. Or you want to see the average, you can see over here. Then it does show you the SoC voltage that is pulling, which I mentioned to you. I've set it to 1.11, but it does not mean that you will run at 1.11. Okay, it might take higher depending on how much my RAMs, the demand on the RAMs is to run at the profile, which I mentioned to you is the Expo AI boost. The rest you need to take note are all the temperature, like the system one. This is actually the motherboard overall. Then the MOSFET, the chipset, the RAMs, and inclusive of the M.2. Now for M.2 there are two, which is showing you the controller and the DAN. One thing good about generation 5 M.2, right, it does show you both temperature instead of one. So as I run, okay, for a few minutes, okay, let me just fast forward. Nothing much tremendously, drastically change. But when I run to the last 3 minutes, okay, let me just pull to the last 3 minutes. Okay, take a look at the timestamp over here. Somewhere around here. Okay, as I run, take a look at the temperature. For the CPU temperature is hovering fine. It's 75, 76, and max is 77 degrees Celsius. So this does prove that the cooling solution, right, is pretty alright. And when I look at the average speed, it's 4.8, which is above the 9950X base clock, which is 4.3. So it's running fine. But the thing is that the peak speed, right, is around 5 gig. And when I look at the SoC voltage, yes, it's pulling slightly higher based on the fact that I've tested my own Expo profile and the AI boost. In fact, the AI boost, right, calculated from this system, right, it runs much better on the latency itself, but with a some kind of compromises as it runs 1.176. If I use Expo profile and not the AI Snatch, right, it will be 1.16 and such. But for this, as I mentioned, the demand on the performance of my RAMs, right, it pumped up to 1.176, which is fine. As long as it doesn't go above 1.2 or 1.25, I'm okay with it. Now, for the rest, as you can take a look, all hovering fine. Okay, though the VRM heatsink, right, the cooling is, I would say, is alright. 60 degree, not to 75 degrees, is pretty alright. But I've seen better. Then for the chipset and the rest, right, is doing fine. Now, for the VRM and for the chipset, is, to me, is slightly higher compared to what I've tested on all the M-ATX board, but it's still hovering fine. So long it's not going above 65 degree or 70 degrees Celsius, it's working perfectly fine. And for the rest of the temperature, like the motherboard, the RAMs, and especially the M.2, surprisingly, is pretty cool. So this tells me that this motherboard, the M.2 heatsink, right, is working perfectly fine. So as I mentioned to you, the CPU temperature, right, it hovers around 75 all the way to 77. Especially when I run to the last few minutes, as you can see, it will toggle. See, 76. Take a look over here. 77, 76 is pretty alright. And for the rest, it's hovering fine, as you can see. It's almost identical as what I mentioned to you earlier. So as for the score, now let me just pull to the end. This is the score, 41K900. Now this is close to 42K, which is good. I wouldn't say it's fantastic, but it's good. So it does perform, or should I say it does push my processor, right, to run at this score, which is at 41K900. Overall, I would say that this board is running fine. My impression of this Gigabyte B850M Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7 ISP is neutral. First of all, the structure is pretty alright. Though it's 6 layer, it's still very sturdy. And the design of it, well, this is actually a collector's item, as I've shown you that it's pretty oriental on the design. On the top side VRM heatsink, where you have this frame over here with a subtle logo of Aorus, nicely done. And I like how they did the drawing on the rear I/O. This is actually a sketch, which is very detailed, see? And with the logo and such, and especially at the bottom, as you have a boatman with these, background scene with mountain and with the pavilion. And to decipher this crest over here, right, at the initial start when I look at it, it's just a simple crest, but when I look deep into it, whoa, okay, since this is a Japanese character, right, the crest over here, it represent the sun. As you can see, the framework around the crest, and it's on top of the mountain. So this is actually the sunrise. Nicely done. Now, as mentioned to you, this is actually a collector's board. So if you to purchase this board in Singapore within this month, till the last date, which is 31st of March, if you purchase within this period of time, you will be given a blind box, which is this, which contain a random character of the 4. So this might be a bonus for you. It's kind of cute to have the figurine sitting on the board itself, or maybe inside your case. Well done. And another thing is that to take note, since this is a Waifu board with all the design over here, right, I would suggest if you want to get this board, make sure you purchase case that allows you to mount your graphic card away from the board, as in like not directly horizontal mounted or vertically mounted. Case like the Lenny Sub-01, where it allows you to mount your graphic card at the front, so that it will fully display the design of the board, and having the silhouette of your ARGB fans at the top, at the rear, and at the bottom right. You will just shine the board so that you can see into details on what they have done. Nicely done. Now, coming to the honest truth of what I feel about this board. Besides collectors, right, this is meant for gamers. If you just want plug and play, having one graphic card to run at full speed and having two M.2, right, this is the board for you. Which it makes sense to run the graphic card at full speed and to have the M.2, and especially when Gigabyte have thought about it. Instead of populating two generation 5 M.2, having the top slot at Gen 5, which is generating tons of heat, that is for your OS drive and your game drive, right? Not an issue. Then right at the bottom right, instead of catering another Gen 5, they deliberately cater for Gen 4 so that it will not overheat. And as you can see on the performance benchmark they have done, right, the M.2 is running super cool based on the fact that this is very chunky. No problem. So if you have good airflow in the case, right, this will definitely able to tank a Gen 5 M.2 and a Gen 4 M.2 without any issues. And on top of which, right, let's say you want to add more storage devices, well, this board is able to cater. It has 4 additional right angle SATA port, more than enough space. Now coming to the performance wise, I would say that this is able to tank a high-end processor, which is 9950X or a 9950X 3D. You can do underboard, but not really overclock. As you can see, right, the 8-pin EPS is only supplying 1. So there will be limitation on running the high-end processor at a overclock rate. Slight overclock, I guess, is okay, but if you want to the extreme, right, this board might not be for you. So do take note on this. Now, besides the overclocking, right, one thing that I feature in this board, which is the AI fetch, I don't have to calculate the algorithm and the performance of the RAMs itself. It will auto calculate with the application called AI fetch, and that will, it does perform as I show you on the RAM benchmark. From 70 over latency, it drops to 69. Okay, this is how great the AI fetch is. And when you control the SoC voltage, right, it doesn't hurt at all on the RAMs, and it does perform very well. Now, besides this, right, the as I mentioned to you, that the function on the AI fetch is fantastic. You can make use of that, a no-brainer. Other than that, right, you can also do on the fly to do the undervolting and such with the Gigabyte control center. And on top of which, right, on Gigabyte control center, where I show you how to detect a strong signal on your Wi-Fi, there is this application whereby I don't have to download any additional application just to detect the signal, how much this can receive. So it's everything in-house. Now, other than that, now, to be honest with you, all the location and ports are alright. The only thing that I find that they need to improve on, right, are the fan headers. As you can see, there are two over the top. This is okay, which is one for the, if let's say you're running air cooler, right, one is for the air cooler, which is alright. If you run on liquid AIO, good too. One for the radiator, one for the pump. Now, as for the front and bottom, you have to depend heavily on the bottom 4-pin PWM fan headers, especially the rear itself. Now, there are still some spaces over here. I was wondering why didn't they place the 4-pin PWM at the top over here. Okay, probably the graphic card is blocking, I guess, but there's still space over here, so it will be great if they can move just one 4-pin PWM fan header up here, so that your rear fan, the cables, right, will just route through here instead of bringing all the way to the bottom. So this is actually just my take about this. And one thing good about this motherboard, right, all the fan headers, right, are 2 ampere. So you don't have to worry that, if you were to daisy chain 3 0.5 ampere fans, right, it will blow the headers. Not all. Fantastically done. Now, other than that, I have nothing. Oh yeah, speaking about the function on the RST switch, as I shown you, it's fantastic. I wish that this is actually an overclocker board where you have this function, so that if from Windows, right, you want to toggle to BIOS or UEFI, right, you can just get an additional switch, press on it, and you will just boot into, from Windows to UEFI. This is a very neat feature. Or you can program it to shut down the ARGB effect. Overall, I would say that this, as mentioned to you, this board to me is pleasant, meant for gamers, but not for overclocking. So take note on it. So if you fancy the artwork and a collector's of waifu boards, right, this might be for you. Now, last thing that I want to mention, the debug LED are all in red. I wish that, Gigabyte will do something about this. Probably have different color indication, so that I know that, as you can see, right, all these are very small, like boot, RAMs, the BGA, and the CPU. So if you have different colors, right, straight away I will know that, oh, it's CPU or it's RAMs or BGA having the issues. Then I can do the troubleshooting. Now, with this said, I'd like to thank Gigabyte to have provided this board for me to share with everyone, and especially to CDL Trading to have deliberately, unpacked the blind box so that I can have 3 character to show you guys, and on the arrangement on the delivery. Hope you guys have enjoyed what I've shared with you, and for those of you who are actually new to my channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button. But don't go away, as the end of this video, right, I will talk about the UEFI interface, be it the easy mode and the advanced mode. Thank you once again, take care, goodbye, see ya. For the UEFI interface, there are 2 different sections. One is on the easy mode, the other is on the advanced. To toggle in between, you can either tap on the section over here, this is easy, this is advanced. Or you can make use of your keyboard, which is the F2 key. See? Starting off with the easy mode, where you have all this top section over here. Now for help, this is to show you all the shortkeys, as how I know to toggle the easy mode and advanced mode is through this help. And it'll show you all the keys over here. Alright, next you have the language, which is this. You can select the language that you wanted. Let's say you want Chinese. See, all this will be in Chinese. I'll set this back to English. Reload, or should I say load default, meaning say whatever configuration you have done on the easy interface, you can just press F7 or click on this. It will bring back to all the default settings. Save and exit, I don't have to mention, it's just to save your configuration, exit, and to put into Windows. For favorites itself, now I'll talk about this in a short while, as there is a folder that contains all the favorite, or should I say the normal functions that you always use. Next you have this search. Now for search, right, Gigabyte have done a wonderful thing whereby they have sectioned it to boot, to CPU, to DDR, to voltage and such. So take for example, for CPU, if I were to do the precision, see, precision boost overdrive, you can just select and to set whatever you want. It's just a short way to look for functions instead of clicking here and there throughout the interface. And on my top left, this is where it shows you the motherboard model, the BIOS version, the processor that you're using on this system, the RAMs that you populate, and the ARGB version. Right at the bottom, you have this DRAM status, whereby it tells you which are the DIMM slot that you populated RAMs on. Which in fact, I'm using a 32 gig kit, as you can see, A2 and B2. Now, as for this section, this is where you toggle the Expo or XMP profile, depending on your RAMs. For my RAMs, I have dual profile. That's why I'm able to toggle either XMP or Expo. But having to say this, right now, I have enabled the Expo AI boost. This is a function which earlier on I mentioned during the AI Snatch, this application, right? It will draw all the profile, okay, pre-calculate everything, whatever your RAMs can perform, then you plug the profile over here so that you can activate the Expo AI boost according to the Mega Transfer. If you have not done that, right, as in like using the AI Snatch application, you will not be able to enable this. Now, in general, for the very first time, this is disabled without all this profile, because it's not been captured on AI Snatch. You'll be able to set the Expo and the XMP profile. As you can see here, as mentioned to you, my RAMs have dual profile, but at all times on AMD platform, right, if you have Expo profile, select on Expo profile. Besides this, you can trigger even better performance. I personally do not like to use this because it's like sometimes it just crash my system. Probably it's because of my RAM kit. But if you are able to toggle this, you will obtain a better performance throughout. If it doesn't crash, so we can use this. And as for core tuning, this is meant for your CPU, so you can just trigger this. But at all times, I'll just leave it auto. Now, one thing Gigabyte have done beautifully, which is on this info section on the CPU, the CPU temperature, the frequency, the temperature, the voltage and such. On all this, right, as you can see when I highlight it, it's like amber color. You can tune it instantly. Take for example the CPU frequency, you can click on it and you can adjust. Right now it's actually on auto. You can set whatever you want to. These are all manual configuration, just on the go, and the ratio and such. Same goes to the temperature. You can set, okay, you can't set the temperature, but you can set the fan curve and such. So instantly you can do based on the CPU temperature and such, you can just adjust. Same goes to the voltage, the V-core. I can do offset over here. See, I've done the offset. Then the rest, like the memory frequency, you can do that too. You want to set expo or XMP. This is in fact a trigger. Okay, this interface is similar. This interface is similar to the profile over here, just to set expo or XMP. And as for system temperature, again, you can set the fan curve on your system fans and such. Now, right at the bottom, Smart Fan 6, where you have the headers, right? Okay, it depends on how many fans you have populated, as in like connect to the motherboard headers, the fan headers. So it will list over here. At the moment, I only have 2, which is my liquid AL that has the pump and the radiator fans. So when you click on this, right, it will give you this interface. So we can control all the fan headers. Take for example my radiator, which is CPU underscore fan. I can trigger all these points over here if I want to. Oops. Manual setting, I guess. Okay, you got to set on manual. Yep. See, you'll be able to toggle. If not, you can make use of the profile over here. Normal, silent, and full. Now, some will ask me that, hey, if you set to silence, will the fan, will your CPU throttle and such? I say no. Based on the fact that you are letting it to run at minimum fan speed, which is quiet. So once your CPU reaches a certain point, right, see, it will just pull. So you don't have to worry that the CPU is going to throttle and such, because what it means when I set to silence, right, at the very beginning, during idle time, your fans will be absolutely silent, which a lot will be using this profile. Else you can just use normal. As you can see, the beginning part, right, you will set to normal. See, it will just pump. And this will increase the RPM of your fans, as you can see. So this is actually on idle. And the rest of the things you can set, things like what you want to monitor before it ramps up. So I'm just going to set this CPU underscore fan, right, to monitor the CPU temperature and such. Then the PWM, or going through the voltage, which is DC, or you can set it to auto, up to you. But most of the time I set it to PWM. Fan stop, up to you. I wouldn't want to actually encourage anybody to do this, because it's like I don't think it's practical to have the fan to stop totally unless you're dealing with the case fan. For AIO and air cooler, right, do not engage this disable, because your temperature of your CPU will go up without any cooling. Take note on this. And besides all this, right, that you can control all the rest of the headers, like your op, your system fan 1 and such. System fan 1 to system fan 4, system fan 3, it's all your case fan, inclusive of the pump, the fan 4 underscore pump. This you can use as a case fan too. But in the event if you use custom water loop and such, right, the pump itself connect to this, okay, to give it more amperage. Alright, besides this, right at the bottom, if you were to set this to manual, right, besides using the points over here, right, you can make use of the column and section over here. You can say how much you want the fan to pump up at 23% of this temperature, 20 degrees, 30 degrees, 40 degrees and such. You can manually set it. And of course, with the beauty of having to save the profile that you have done and to load the profile. So these are the things on the smart fan. Now, at the bottom section here where it has Q Flash, this is meant for you to flash your BIOS, the latest BIOS that you've downloaded to the system. I would not encourage you to use this at all, based on the fact that yes, it can flash the latest BIOS through this way on UEFI, but in the event if there is a power failure or your power just cut off during the process of updating the BIOS, right, you might just prick the board. I would suggest you to make use of the BIOS flash back button at the back of the I/O. That is a better way to flash the BIOS, because in the event if power cut and such, right, using the BIOS flash back button at the back, it will still store the previous BIOS version. So during power failure or such, right, you will just pump back to the the last working BIOS, and you will not prick the board, which is good. Operation mode. Now, operation mode depends on you what you want to choose. If you want it forever when you boot into UEFI, right, to run an advanced mode, right, just select to advanced. So when you boot into UEFI, right, this is the interface that you will see, which is the advanced mode. For me, I'll just leave it auto. When I set it to auto, right, I'm going to say whatever mode they have selected, be it easy mode or advanced mode, the last mode that you're on when you reboot or boot into UEFI next time, right, it will follow according to your last mode that you're on. Okay, fast boot. Okay, a lot will just do this, but I wouldn't advise you to do the fast boot because it will bypass the splash screen and such. I wouldn't advise this, as it's gonna have a hard time to go into UEFI. I'll just leave it as off. Then you have the SPD info. So these are the JDAC info of the Expo. Okay, A2C. It will show you the JDAC. So these are information that you might want to know. What kind of RAMs and controller that is used and such. Then right at the bottom you have this theme. Now there's only one theme, which is the area theme. ARI theme. As you can see, when I drop down, right, there are no other themes. So this will be only on this interface, how it looks like, the design of it. Then you have ARP. This is the power saving management during an idle time. So during an idle time, right, the thing will just bring down to the lowest current, and when you shake the mouse and such, right, it will just spring back to life, drawing more current and such. But again, I would advise, personally, I do not like to use ERP. Okay, I do not like the certain jump on the current. That means to say, pumping the current to my processor and to my RAMs. That will cause, that will hurt the processor in the long run. And also another thing is that on Windows itself, right, I do not set on sleep mode for my system, neither do I set hibernation mode. In the event you want to use the PC, right, I just turn it on. If you want to go rest and such, right, I just totally shut it off. So this is actually my habit. Okay, coming to here, the X3D turbo mode. Well, this is a function whereby it's catered for processor that has a X3D technology, which is the 9800 X3D, 7800 X3D and such. So when you toggle this, right, this will enable that, and this is for better gameplay. I personally have not done this as I don't play games, so you can try this out yourself. Coming to the boot sequence. Now, oops. For boot sequence, right, this is to show you, okay, first boot is through Windows. Second, this is deliberately a USB thumb drive that I plug in, assuming this is actually Linux. If you want to change the sequence, as in like, instead of booting to Windows, right, to Linux, you can just click here, then you can just shift. So when you shift this, right, this is telling you that you're booting default Linux instead of Windows. So every time when you save this and you reboot, either you reboot or you cold start the boot itself, right, you will boot into Linux. So this is actually what it means by boot party. Then other than that, SPD setup. These are the advanced settings that you can set. Okay, I'm not going to do in advance. You can save and you can load. Last but not least, at the section over here, onboard LAN control. This is the LAN port. If you're not using LAN port, you're using Wi-Fi, you can just set this off. So basically, these are all the functions that you can do. Okay, forget to mention, if you want to change the time date, you can click on the time date, and this will allow you to set the system date and the system time. Next is on the advanced mode. You can either click on the tab on the top right hand corner, which says easy or advanced, or you can press the keyboard F2 and you will take you to the advanced mode. On the advanced mode, on the right hand side, you will see all the status on your CPU, your memory, and voltages. These are always there. And right at the bottom, you have this Smart Fan 6, where it does all the configuration on your fans. It has a Q flash, which is meant for you to update your BIOS, and with the help to show you all the shortkeys, and of course the search function. Now, when you are on the advanced mode, the first thing that you will see is the favorites submenu. this is all the functions that you often use. And to add more functions to this folder, you can just go to the section that you wanted or often perform. Take, for example, you want to do this. You can just press the insert key. See, there is a star located over here. So once you do this, right, at your favorites, you will see the IO port that you selected, or you can do more. Take, for example, this. I often use this. I'll just click on insert and you will show. So with this say, right, it will be listed on your favorite folder. So all the functions that you often use, right, you can just do it as a one pager. So everything will pull out for you on one page, and you can just set the configuration over here. And in the event, let's say you do not want that function anymore, right, there's two ways of doing it. You can remove these features on this favorite page itself. Take, for example, I were to remove this, I can just press insert and you'll be gone. Or on the main section that you've selected the function, right, you can delete too. Take for example, this is with a star. If I were to press on the insert key, right, see, it's gone. So this is actually how you do the favorites. Now for Twinkle, a lot of things I will not go in depth. Instead, I'll just show you what they are. Starting off with this, you can set the clock frequency and such, the spread and such. Okay, as mentioned, I'm not going to go into detail. So these are things that you can set manually. Now for precision boost overdrive, I believe that even newcomers, when they start to use AM5 platform, right, often been mentioned that you can do this and to have your system perform much better using undervolting and such. Now this is just a one click. It's more on, okay, for this function over here, it's more on overclock. It's not really undervolt. So if you want to, you want to take the risk and to enable the PBO2 limits with the preset of the motherboard, right, you can click on this. As you can see, you have certain levels of toggling. Okay, take for example, okay, what does this 70, 80, 90 means? Meaning to say you allow the system to run at a max temperature of 70 degree, 80 degrees, or 90 degrees. And on all this, right, the 70 degree, 80 degrees, and 90 degrees, right, there are 5 levels. You can start off with level 1, okay, not so aggressive, then level 2, level 3, level 4, and so forth. So take for example, you want to set it to allowing your system to run a max temperature from your CPU, right, at 80 degrees Celsius, not more than that. So once it exceeds 80 degrees Celsius, right, you will just cool down and you will not push. So you can set it to level 1, level 2, level 3. As the higher level you go, right, the more aggressive the push is. Meaning to say, grabbing more voltage, and pushing all to the limits. So do take note on this. You can play with this. Next will be eco mode. Now a lot will do this, enabling. Now this is instead of temperature, right, you're only allowing the system to run based on the fact that which kind of voltage that it will pull. Advanced CPU setting, these are things that you can set. Now I know that there is a precision boost overdrive under Tweaker. I wouldn't advise you guys to use this. Instead, there is another area. Then you have the expo profile as usual. See, you can enable expo or XMP depending on your RAMs. Then this I mentioned, if you want to push your RAMs higher performance and such, right, you can make use of this function, and depending on the quality of your RAMs. So when you enable this, right, the system will push harder on your RAMs to perform. But at all times I will not use this as I don't want to degrade my RAMs. Then you have the core configuration as mentioned to you. You can set the level up to you. Multiplier, well, these are the place where you play with the MT. Right now it's at 60 based on the fact that I'm running on 6000 mega transfer. You can set it up like 68, 70 and such. But for my preference, right, I like to use RAM which is only 6000, which is at the sweet spot. So if you purchase a RAM of 6800 and such, right, you can set over here. Take for example 6800, you will set 68. It will run at 6800. But it still depends on the quality of your RAMs. Okay, now for the rest, Infinity Fabric depend on the calculation of your RAMs mega transfer, right? I know that my 6000 mega transfer is at 2000, so we can set. Or if you do not know anything, right, you can just set it auto. See, I can set auto on my multiplier. I can set auto on the Infinity Fabric. Okay, let me just set this. Alright, by default it's actually auto, based on the fact that, as mentioned to you, I've done the AI Snatch. That's why it changes the figures to the configuration. Alright, this UClock DIV1 mode, it depends on your RAMs again. For 6000 mega transfer or 6200 mega transfer, right, most of the time it's actually 1-to-1 ratio. Meaning to say the communication between your RAMs and your processor, right, is 1-to-1. If you are doing 1.1-to-2 ratio, right, meaning to say there is a delay there. Okay, for more information, probably you need to do a research on what does it mean by 1-to-1 ratio or 1-to-2 ratio. Then for advanced memory setting, this is where you do the memory timing and such. Okay, I will skip this first. Spec info, as in like your RAMs, the JDAC, which you saw on the easy mode, which I've shown you, and the setup, you can do this. Now, all this, a lot will just say disable, the gear down as disable and such. They don't want the idle on the RAMs itself, as in like to drop the voltage. But for me, right, I'll just leave this as it is. And also coming to the memory context restore, right now it's actually auto. So once after verified, right, a lot will just do disable. Okay, so that the last good verification that is done on the system, right, you just keep on booting to that profile. But I noticed that by disabling it, right, because for AM5 platform, it has a special thing about the RAM training cycle. Every 30 days, right, it will refresh. Okay, it's going to expire, in fact, whatever you have verified. So for this function, right, you might face problem, as in like, take for example, right now it's being verified and I've set this to disable. Okay, this function here to disable. So once it reaches the 30 days expiry, your system might not be able to boot and such, and that is where the problem you have to do clear CMOS. So that's the problem that I do not like to use this disable. Yes, it's fast, but it only guarantees you to a certain time. I would rather do it auto. Okay, leave this as it is, as in like every 30 days, right, you just refresh, and it's just only one time per month. That's it. Okay, it's not going to kill you. So leave it as auto, let it, do its RAM training cycle. So to provide a better stable platform for your RAMs to run on the system. Alright, now back to the memory sub timing. This is where you do all the configuration yourself manually. Okay, I'm not going to go in depth. These are the things that you can do. You can do tighter timings and such. Now, as mentioned to you, I've used the AI Snatch. By right, all this, right, okay, take for example, take a look at this. This should be auto. But after the AI Snatch, right, it was set to 76 and such. These are all pre-configured by the AI Snatch. Okay, this is done. Then you have the bottom section where you have the V-core. Now, these are the offsets that you can do. By right, it's actually on auto, but I often like to use a lower V-core. So it's allowing the processor to tell the system, or should I say your motherboard took the instruction saying that, hey, look, I'm going to provide whatever the processor is needed, instead of having the motherboard telling the processor, hey, I'm going to just throw you 1.35 volt, please use 1.35 volt all the way. Okay, so that's the meaning of what I meant by offset. So to do the offset, right, I'll just set it normal, and I'll set it just a bit, not very aggressively. As you can see here, minus 0.05 volt, or should I say minus 0.05 volt, which is very little, but it does help a bit. Okay, of course, if you don't like this, you can set it to auto. You want your processor to have the capability to stay stable and such, you can do this. Now for the V-core SoC, this is actually your memory, which is your memory IMC that communicates with the PMIC on your processor. Often at default, Okay, if you set this to auto, right, it will pull. Okay, let me just do this auto. It will pull almost 1.2 volt to 1.25 volt, and the higher mega transfer of RAMs that you use, right, let's say 7000, 7800, or even higher capacity RAMs like 64, 96, right, it will push more than 1.25 volt, and in the long run, right, it will degrade your RAMs. So that's the reason. That's the reason why I've set it lower, and I know that my piece of RAM, right, is able to run at 1.15 volt, between 1.15 volt and 1.16 volt. But for Gigabyte, okay, I've set it to 1.11. Okay, I know that when I set to this, right, different motherboards have different take, alright, so please take note on this. I set it to 1.11 volt because when I do the actual run of the RAMs, right, it's pulling at 1.152. Okay, so that's the reason why I set it to this. And for the rest, a lot will say that, oh, set this, set that, etc. I just leave it as auto because I don't see there's a necessity to engage this. By the way, if you engage this, right, I know some will put on the VDDIO, right, to 1.35. Okay, much lower. But I can tell you, no matter what I set, right, I find that the system is not stable when I do my compilation and my 3D rendering work. So I just leave it to auto. Okay, advanced voltage setting. This is for your load line. No, this is not load line calibration. Oh, for the rest of the voltage that you can do. Okay, you can set. For this, I will not touch again. I'll leave it. If you're adventurous enough, you can do that. Now next will be the CPU or VRAM setting. This is where the load line calibration is. Now when you set it to auto, right, normally the system for the CPU and the RAMs, right, it will draw between normal and standard, which is of the lowest. If you want to overclock, then set your load line calibration for this is the CPU, this is for your RAMs. So we can set it to extreme and such. When you're doing that, right, please take note, higher voltage will be drawn or wattage will be drawn. So for this, I'll leave it to auto. So this is all the section on the Twitter. Next will be the settings. Now settings is pretty clean. Okay, I like about this board is everything is very clean. Power platform, take a look. These are things that you can do. And as mentioned to you, ERP I will not use. If you want to use it, you can use that. So these are the rest of the settings that you can do. Next will be IO port. Now for IO port, this is to tell you things that you want to set, like your graphic card, your audio card and such. Now as you can see, right, my integrated HD audio, which is actually on the onboard, is disabled based on the fact that I'm using a external audio console, or should I say audio interface. So by disabling that, right, when it boot the system, right, it doesn't need to verify that I'm using the audio. Instead, you just boot faster. So whatever you have not used over here, right, you can disable it. Let's say you're using Wi-Fi, you're not using LAN port, you can just disable it. So all this, right, does help in boot up. It's like to speed up the boot up. And of course, you can set the initial display output, things like that. You want to display, let's say you don't have a discrete graphic card, you only have the integrated graphic on the processor, you can just set it to IGP video. By all times, I'll just leave it as PCIe 1 slot because I believe most of you will be using discrete graphic card. Then integrated graphic detection, whether to point to your integrated or to your discrete. If I set this to disable, right, the system will just ignore the integrated graphic. Okay, this is actually where most of the gamers will do. They will disable the integrated graphics on the processor. Instead, when you disable this, right, it will solely make use of your discrete graphic. Then the rest you can set over here, up to you. Okay, since there are numerous of PCIe slot, so you can set to 8 to times 8 or such. If you have populated those additional PCIe devices on the slot, then you have this 3D. I believe this is the, I can't remember, is, let's say 3 3D bar or something, I can't remember, but this you have to enable. Oh, resizable bar, that's right, so sorry about this. So all this I just leave it, I will not touch. Then the rest, like the Gigabyte utility download configuration, well, this is meant whereby the first time when you install Windows, right, when you boot it up, there will be a prompt on the lower right to tell you to install the Gigabyte control center. I will just leave this as enable. Okay, next you have the Super IO configuration. Just to show you, you can set this enable or disable. USB configuration to set legacy or not, but I believe most of us is using the up to date USB, which is USB 3 and such. We no longer use USB 1.0 and such, so just leave it. NVMe configuration, okay, on your M.2 you can set the test, self-test, but most of the time I'll leave this as auto. SATA configuration, this is where you set the hot plug switch, either enable or disable. Okay, what does this do is that if you have a physical 2.5 inch hard disk or a 3.5 inch hard disk and it's running on the system, if you want to detach it instantly without shutting down your machine, do the hot plug, sorry, SATA port hot plug. Okay, tongue twisting. When you do this enable, right, on Windows itself you can eject the you have to hover over the USB icon on the lower right and to eject the drive. Once you have done that, right, you're safe enough to pull out the hard disk. So this is actually what it meant. Then furthermore, you have the network stack configuration. I wouldn't know what this is, I'll just leave it. Then it will show you your physical LAN port, all the description, the MAC address and such. Okay, so this is based on the IO port. Next you have miscellaneous, so you can set all this. These are meant for the link on your PCIe slot. See, you can set generation 1, generation 2 and such. Same goes to your M.2. Alright, and if you were to set this accordingly to your generation of your graphic card and your M.2, right, you will boot faster. Okay, then for 3D mark enhancement, this is actually when you do the 3D mark benchmarking. If you enable this, right, it will optimize to that to yield better scores and results. Then at the bottom, these are the trust platform, which is required when you install Windows 11. I'll just leave it as, I'll just leave this as it is. I'm talking about this section over here. Now, at the top over here where it says LEDs in system power on state, it is on. So you have the postcode going on and such on the digital LED. So if you do not want that, right, you can turn it off. And as for RST multi-key, I've shown you earlier how this works. You can program it to turn off the LEDs. Of course, you will need to plug a physical switch, which is optional. You can purchase it and to plug it on the 2-pin prompt. And when you toggle the button, right, you will follow the instruction over here. Let's say you want to turn off the ARGB effect on the motherboard, on the chipset area. You can just press and you just switch off. Or you can have that switch to program as, to boot into BIOS or boot into safe mode. So these are the things that you can do with this RST switch. Okay, next will be AMD CVS. So these are the configuration that you can do. Alright, I'm not just going to go in depth and such. Now, probably one NetBio common option. This is where you set your graphic card and your audio in depth. So for graphic card configuration, see, you can disable your integrated discrete graphic card or such, or the integrated. Now, if this is too difficult for you, just leave it auto. You don't have to touch it. I'm just showing you, alright? Then you have all the rest of the function, which I personally don't touch. So at this section, right, the only thing that I will touch on this AMD CBS is on the SMU common option. If using a 3D X3D 9950 X3D, right, I will come to this section where you have this CPPC function. Right now you don't have that because this is not a X3D processor. So this is the only thing that I'll touch over here. Then other than that, you have the AMD overclocking. Now, as mentioned to you on the tweaker, okay, bring you back to the tweaker, you have this advanced CPU settings. You have this precision boost overdrive, right? Okay, I will not use this. Instead, I will make use of this under setting, which is AMD overclocking, going through a proper step. When you click on this, you click on accept, and these are the configuration that you can do. I often will make use of this SOC uncall OC mode. This is to enable the communication between the RAMs and the system to run to its optimized performance. You can read over here, got to do with the Infinity Fabric. Next, I will do the precision boost overdrive, where it's commonly done as for those who actually want to underboard or to overclock. So these are the section you can, by right it's actually on auto, so you have to set it either to enable or advanced. For people like me, right, to underboard, these are the things that I will do. I'll set to advanced. I'll manually select the PVO limits. By right it's actually on auto. You can set it to motherboard or disable it. Motherboard meaning say you allow the system, or should I say the motherboard, to give whatever power limits, or the PPT, the TDC and EDC to your processor to run. Or you can set it to auto, which is pulling the AMD default profile with all the PPT, TDC and EDC. For me, right, it's either I use auto or manual, but most of the time I want full control on my processor. I'll set it to manual, and these are the configuration that I'll be doing. See, I know that this configuration over here, right, are the default what AMD is providing. And of course, as mentioned to you, right, all this in fact is the same as when you set to auto. Okay, but it's just that I'm very particular about this. I just want it to, have total control of what I configure. So once you have done this, right, the rest, like the scaler, I know a lot will do manual and do 10 times. A warning to you guys, if you do this, right, your health of your processor will degrade drastically because you're pumping times 10 more on the V core, right? And this might cause your system not stable or not able to run in a prolonged period of time. Okay, and there is argument telling me that, hey Cleo, my processor is warranted for 3 years, so why not make it to the max? If it's done with it, right, I can just RMA it. Yes, you can, depending on which region you are. Imagine that you RMA your processor, you're able to replace a new one, but how long does it take for you to keep your system functioning properly? So this is the risk that you want to take. Go ahead. For me, I'll just leave it to auto. Okay, if not, you can set it to 1x, safest bet. Okay, next will be CPU boost clock override. A lot will just enable positive and set it to 200 just for that. Okay, sorry, just for the extra 200 megahertz, which I find kind of silly, because when you set it to 200 more, right, take for example your default base clock is running at 5.2. Take for example, or maybe not 5.2. For this is actually 4.8. You just wanted to run at 5,000, okay, by just pumping to this. And from 4,800, without this trigger, right, you're running a, let's say, a CPU power drawn and maybe 118 watt. If you set it to 200, right, it will shoot up to 120 or 122. So that is actually a lot, okay, in terms of voltage, and inclusive of the amperage and voltage especially. So I find it very silly. Just for the 200, you can't see a significant difference, and yet you are pushing so high. So at all times, I'm so sorry to say, I don't usually enjoy using this at all. I will just disable. No point, redundant. Platform thermal throttle control. Now, as mentioned to you on the tweaker, okay, let me just bring you back to tweaker, where you have this precision boost overdrive enhancement, where you have all the levels, is exactly the same. Instead of having the preset, you are defining the throttle. You can have it 75. Okay, manual. You can have it 75 degrees, okay, 80 degrees, 90 degrees, or even you want to set 65 degrees. Up to you. When you set all this right, it will not push the system any further. Once it reaches 65, or maybe not 65, 75 degrees Celsius, right, the system will put to a halt. It will lower down all the configuration automatically, auto adjustment, so that it will not throttle. So this is actually what it meant. Right, curve optimizer for UEFI. This is actually meant for you to set your integrated graphic, which I don't use at all. Okay, I find it's no point. What's the point of setting the integrated graphic, which is kind of like pointless to me. Okay, disable. Curve optimizer, yes, often used since the era of 5000 series and the 7000 series AMD processor. With this area, you can set the magnitude lower, and you will gain system performance, and you will lower down the CPU temperature. So with this area, I know that this processor here have 2 CCD, so I'll set it to negative value. Most important is that, okay, be it whether you set to all core or per core, right, make sure that this, the curve optimizer signal, or should I say the sign, is negative, okay, and not positive. Then you can set magnitude 20, 15, up to you, or maybe 30. Now for my stand, right, I normally will not set more than 20. Okay, I don't want it to have a full stretch. By doing a full stretch, right, even though it's not stressing the processor itself, right, your system might not go stable if it is pulling too much, as in like dropping the voltage drawn too much. Let's say some will say that, oh, I can run on 50. Yes, you can run, no problem. Try this all the way for more than 8 months or 1 year. See what happened to your system as you install games, more games and such. You will definitely degrade. It's like not supplying enough sufficient voltage to your processor, right, is equivalent as bad as having to pump much more voltage. So do it in between. I would just do 20. Alright, so for this, right, is per core, per CCD, I'll set it to -15, -10 for this processor. Then for curve shaper, now if you want to know how this works, please go and dig information on what is curve shaper. Okay, I do have illustration on this. You can check it out on the PPO settings and such. I did mention on how this works. So these are the settings that you can do. So this is all about the precision boost overdrive. It's already done. Let me just escape. Then come to the last section of the settings, which is the PC health. It's showing you all the voltages, the current and such. Okay, just some information. Next you have, done. Okay, settings all done. Now come to the info, system info. This is all where it shows you the motherboard model, the BIOS, just like an easy mode. And instead of clicking on this, you can set your time date over here. See, you can set. All right, same goes to your time date. Same goes to your time. Then for this, right, the SS level as such is by default. The theme itself, there's only one. Then plug in device info, more information about your device, what you have plugged in. Okay, I only plug in my M.2. Then you have the SPD info, which again the JDAC on the RAM slot that you populated. Okay, come to boot. Now this section over here is pretty interesting. Not say interesting, it's like, as I show you, right, you want to boot according to what you want. For example, right now default is on Windows. My second boot is actually Linux, take for example. If you want to boot this default on Linux, just highlight this, or should I say enter this, and to select the Linux drive. If you want to go back, just hit back to Windows. Then all this, I will not talk about this, as all these are default. Okay, you do not want the splash logo to show. You can just disable it and such. Security option system. Okay, I'll leave this. I will not touch. Then for administrative password, in the event if you share your PC with your siblings, you don't want them to touch your UEFI configuration. You can set a password for this. So every time when they enter to UEFI, right, it will prompt you to give a password before you can do alteration on the UEFI. Or subsequently, you don't want them to touch your profile, but you allow them to do their own profile. You can give them a user password. So whatever been configured by user password, right, the profile will be different from the administrative password. Okay, as in like the profile of what you have done, all the settings that you've done, it will be totally different from what they have changed using the user password. Okay, secure boot. Okay, before I talk about secure boot, preference operation mode, as mentioned to you, either you want to put UEFI into advanced mode or easy mode, or set it to auto. Okay, depending on you. For secure boot, for gamers out there playing Valorant, this is very important for you. By right, this is on standard. If you want to play Valorant, you have to trigger this standard to custom. Okay, that will allow you to play Valorant. If not, you will hit into problems playing Valorant. And do remember, while you are having the system running at this way, right, having the secure boot as custom, right, in the event if you want to change your hard drive, or to sell off your hard drive and such, right, you want to format your hard drive, wipe out, right, make sure you come back before you do the wipe out or format. Come back to UEFI, set this to standard before you do the wipe. Okay, because if you don't do this, right, example, let's say you didn't wipe out anything on the hard drive and you pass it or you sell it to someone else, and someone else is to use the your OS drive, right, they can't install Windows at all. There will be a lock on it. Then you're gonna have a problem. Or even yourself, if you're reusing the hard drive, or should I say the M.2, and when you reformat, right, you will hit into problem. So take note on this. Okay, so this is all about the boot section. Last but not least, these are all self-explained. I don't have to mention what this does. You just save, exit your profile, and go into Windows.